In Genesis 2:9, we see that every tree was pleasing to the sight and good for food. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil was there. And the word for evil is ra. That's often translated in modern Hebrew as simply bad. But it really means that it should be evil. The word means that which is malicious, nasty, wrong, wicked. In short, it's really bad. It's everything that is opposite of God, everything that is opposite of what he stands for. And in Genesis 2:16 through 17, we see that God prohibits or forbids eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Interestingly, it says that they could eat of any other tree that was there. And we see that, if we read the account, we see that the tree of life was there at that time. The tree of eternal life. Now, isn't it odd that having access to all of the trees in the garden, instead of desiring eternal life, that the first tree that they desired was for the knowledge of good and evil? The temptation, as always, is that we want what we cannot have or what we're denied. Adam and Eve could have had eternal life for the picking, presumably, but they lost it for the sake of satisfying a temptation. God then barred them from the tree of life. Many have considered that a punishment or think of that as God punishing them, but the reality, I think, is different. I think it was a protection. Imagine the horror of living eternally in a sin-filled state with no hope of fellowship with your Creator being restored. That would have been the cruelest cut of all, to make them live eternally in their lostness with no hope of ever coming out of that. Because I think if they had lived in their sin, if they lived eternally in their sin, that there would be no way that they could be restored short of God doing something. And God did do something for us, and we'll talk about that later. In Revelation 22:14, though, we find, "Blessed are those who wash their robes, that they may have the right to the tree of life, and may enter by the gates into the city." That right, the free access to all that was lost in the fall, is now restored. Eden's life-giving water, plenteous fruit, and eternal life have been redeemed. And we see that in the tree of life represented. It says that the tree of life was on both sides of the river. And I believe that this tree of life is another representation of Jesus Christ. That he is the vine and we are the branches, and that he is the source of eternal life for us. Just as the tree in the garden, the tree of eternal life was there, we see this is a picture of Jesus from the very beginning. Christ is in the scriptures from the very beginning.